Thanks for joining us. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Spirion Fundamentals, Accelerating Your AIP MIP Migration. I'd like to introduce our presenters. Joining us today is Gabriel Gums, VP of Product Management at Spirion. Gabriel focuses on the strategy and technology propelling Spirion's rapidly growing security platform. He's a cybersecurity industry veteran with a 19-year tenure in cybersecurity. He's also spent much of that time as a security practitioner, aligning security innovations with business objectives for Fortune 100 organizations. Also joining us is Rob Server, product manager at Spirion. Rob has led the sales engineering team at Spirion over the past 5 years and is now bringing his Spirion product knowledge and passion to our product management team. He's dedicated to leveraging customer feedback and ideas to help define the products that we build to continue to solve your business problems with greater impact than ever. Welcome, Gabriel and Rob. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. How do I get you to do that for me everywhere I go? Probably not a thing. That's all right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We've got a little bit to go through, so we'll go ahead and get started. Rob, thanks for coming along. Agenda-wise, so went through the introductions. Going to talk a little bit about what AIP MIP is. I still get some questions from time to time, and so it sounds like there's just a slight bit of confusion, kind of where the line between one begins and one ends. Is it the same thing? Is it a different thing? Kind of what is it? So we'll talk just a little bit of what that is. And we'll talk about the integration between Spirion and AIP MIP before we jump into a live demonstration of that integration. And then we'll touch a little bit more on some of the recent updates to the platform and some of the things that allows for. So let's start really with the question of, what's the purpose of talking about accelerating your adoption of AIP MIP? Well, you may be thinking about using it. You may already be using it, depending on kind of which of the tiers of service of Microsoft you have. In order to get access to AIP MIP, first of all, you have to have at a minimum their E3 license. And so what customers are really trying to do with the Microsoft AIP MIP, which stands for Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Information Protection, is leverage their one of two paths. I have them kind of shown here on the screen, either leveraging their rights management system and using encryption and or their data loss prevention technologies. And that's kind of what AIP MIP allows you to do. It does that with a number of different controls. And so here I've kind of had them laid out from sharing, protected, usage tracking, and revoking access when necessary from an RMS perspective. So we'll go through all of those things. Some of the primary goals of the customers that we've spoken to with regards to leveraging these platforms really falls around that protection of information with their encryption and access controls and all the additional DLP protections. And the way that occurs is by leveraging the labeling system within the platform to allow that to happen. And you can label those things with both AIP and MIP. And Rob, help me out here and jump in if I say something incorrectly. But the primary difference, right, is that AIP is Azure Information Protection, and as the name suggests, it works within the Azure environment. So it is necessary to have that environment as part of your setup, and it only works within the Azure environment, AIP that is. And so that's kind of where MIP comes into play, Microsoft Information Protection. It extends some of that a little further out from just Azure, but it does still have very much the same functionality, which is to say you can apply one label to those documents, and then you can use all of the AIP protections to protect those things. So everything does still kind of roll up into AIP, whether you're using just AIP itself or if you're using MIP, all the things still are governed and protected through that platform and environment. And so one of the primary reasons that customers have been talking to us about being able to leverage our solution to help with their usage of controlling documents within the Azure environment has a lot to do with the reasons why they use the Spirion platform in the first place, right? The speed and the accuracy of being able to go through all of that information and the accuracy with which we can classify all that information. By contrast with AIP, applying that singular label to any documents, while good, doesn't always meet the needs of the business, if you would. Being able to classify and label something as both, say, internal and confidential, as well as having personal and PII information, personally identifiable information, is still very much the way a lot of workflows actually happen in the real world. And so to that end, customers are now using the Spirion platform to be able to align those two environments together, take all of the classification workflows, all of the discovery, namely all of the AnyFind technology within the Spirion platform and the sensitive data definitions within the Spirion platform, and have those be leveraged by AIP, MIP to apply those controls so that you can then take either of those two paths. So the way the integration works is by currently using all of the discovery and classification and protection mechanisms that are built into the Spirion platform and extending those into the encryption patch, the RMS patch, the DLP patch of Azure. And for that matter, vice versa. So labels that are set with AIP, MIP can equally be acted upon and protected by the Spirion platform. So a common scenario within a Spirion environment, someone may have a workflow that does not allow any HR data to persist or exist outside of a very specific part of the environment. So maybe they can exist on anyone's machine that isn't within the HR group, and it can exist in any server that isn't explicitly controlled or folders that are part of the HR work environment. And so leveraging the labels from AIP, Spirion can then perform those same protections. And then vice versa, leveraging the Spirion discovery and classification, we can apply that Azure label so that as you then use AIP to protect that information, the two then just work seamlessly together. Anything there that I should expand on a little bit further, Rob? Maybe you want to touch a bit more on maybe say AnyFind for those that aren't intimately familiar or may need a little bit of a refresher, just kind of a quick minute or two on kind of the discovery portion of that, and then we can tie the two back together.
Sure, thanks for that, Gabe. Spirion's cornerstone is accurate data results through our AnyFind technology. That means when we find that HR data, PCI data, any GDPR style data, we're returning very low false positive rate matches. You want to use Spirion when you want to be certain about results. Now, that leads into our workflow technology, which allows us to apply classifications, labels, actions like MIP protection to those files automatically. This is superior in a lot of ways, and we enhance a lot of what Microsoft does by going beyond their pattern recognition technologies. We're able to reduce false positives, apply protection to Microsoft enables files on the desktop with the MIP implementation to help move things into the cloud.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for that. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's jump in, and live demos are always fun. Let's go ahead and jump in and show how that workflow and how that actually occurs within the platform.
We'll go ahead and start with how simple it is to integrate in with MIP. So this is a typical Spirion console, and it has a new option here on the admin tab, which is the external authentication. Now, your AIP administrator should be able to give you the roles and the authentication credentials to sync your console. It's very simple. You usually have your credential, you go out, you do Microsoft authentication on their website, gives you an authentication code, and you can apply that authentication to the Spirion application, which makes the labels available. So you have labels in your AIP workspace. They're then synced down to the console with the proper settings of whether or not it's going to be protected, i.e. encrypted by RMS or not. From then, the integration is additionally very simple. You create workflows like you do inside of Spirion with, well, let's take a look at PCI data. We'll use that example for a moment. If you find PCI data and you want to protect it, you can simply create a workflow rule. And this is a very basic rule. You can build out rules that will find things with different contexts, which is also an improvement over what we could do with other types of classification engines today, building in that contextual awareness, not only classifying the data, but looking for other reasons why, such as counts, locations, metadata such as time and date stamp access, etc. Once you have that rule built out, you can set the scope of the rule and then apply classifications. Simply check the box that says perform the following MIP label action, approve the classification from the list, and then make sure it runs directly on the endpoint. Every other option in here for console is, and the workflow rule is as normal with Spirion, where you can set scope of how the rule wants to run, how you want to inform your end users by sending out email notifications, etc. You're also able to set discrete numbers of rules to fire for any eventuality you wish to have in your console. With that, let's go ahead and go to the endpoint agent that has this approved, and we'll just run a search. I have a few sample files here. We're going to run a search on these files over here, and you're going to see classifications applied and the Azure Information Protection applied to each of those files as it searches for them. So we're seeing results appear in the pane. You're going to see the RMS encryption applied to that file. It's now containered, so the classification is not viewable currently because this is inside of a classified file. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and you'll see that as Office is loading, I happen to have the credentials to open that file. If I did not, I would not be able to open this file. So we'll see this open up with Word. It has the AIP classification. You can view permissions, etc. This account can open that file, so I can see it. This also works with PDFs and any other type of file that we can read and classify data with through our MIP implementation.
That's excellent. It's worth pointing out that for those that are familiar with the Spirion platform, what you're seeing there is exactly the same workflow that you normally would have had, and now you're simply just extending that out so that you're pulling in classification labels that may have been set by your Azure administrators. That may be the same person, quite frankly, within the environment. This allows you to extend those labels bidirectionally, if you would. That is to say that now that document that you see that has that RMS protection on it, that was a byproduct of using both the Spirion system to perform that discovery and classification, so leveraging that accuracy and that speed, applying that AIP label, performing all of the additional protection mechanisms that AIP leverages and allows for, and putting that all together in one package. So again, a pretty straightforward integration, at least from the end user's perspective, from platform administrator's perspective. We worked pretty hard to make sure that that was clean and seamless under the hood there. Really appreciate that, Rob.
Sure.
There's not a whole lot else here I really wanted to kind of dive into today. We wanted to focus specifically on this bit of functionality. I will talk a little bit more about a couple of new things that we've introduced, but we do have some subsequent and follow-up webinars that'll go into some additional detail about all of those things. So if there's nothing else in that, if you can toss the ball back, I'll kind of just go back over some of those benefits there, if you would. We'll touch on some of the other things that may not have been explicit in what we showed there. So again, because I think I saw one of those questions come across, you do need, yes, to the question that was asked, you do need to have at a minimum an E3 license to be able to leverage this integration. It's probably better to think about, once you have this in place, how you can now move on up to maybe an E5 license. That brings in all of the Microsoft protection mechanisms. And one of the benefits to that, to using the two together, is now that you'd be able to extend out the Spirion solution, which is going to allow you to perform all of those activities in your storage environments, on premise, all the things that you were getting previously with the Spirion platform, automatically bulk labeling and classifying all of that data. You can now incorporate into that universe all of the sensitive information within your cloud environment. So we were always able to reach into the cloud and perform those discovery and classifications. And so really what this does now is allows us to tie together both the labeling system that's coming down from AIP, as well as extend throughout the Spirion platform all of the additional, those two paths that I showed earlier, namely the protection RMS path and all of the rights revocation and things of that nature. One of kind of the other common tasks and scenarios is that automatic reclassification of all those documents also. So if maybe you happen to have been using AIP prior, you would certainly want to ensure that those labels that were being applied were accurate. And that's where we've seen a lot of folks come to us with help. Just want to be able to ensure that those classifications are what they intend to be. And so having the Spirion system perform that check and overlay it is yet another one of those benefits, and then being able to report back on all of those things also. So pretty cool integration we've got going on there. Something else you want to add, Rob?
No, I was just going to agree with you. It literally is seamless, and we designed it that way. And thanks to Microsoft for helping us with that.
All right, so let's touch on a couple other things before we've got just under 10 minutes left, and I wanted to introduce a number of two new things, in fact. So one of those things we also introduced in the latest release was some big data discovery in MongoDB. So it's a no SQL database platform. So again, for those of you who've been following along at home, we've always been able to do structured and unstructured data environments, from your Oracles to your SQLs, your MySQLs, you name it. Well, we've extended that out to NoSQL environments as well. And so MongoDB is now part of the Spirion supported platforms that we can extend all of that discovery and classification to as well. Mongo was the one we decided to choose first, as it really is the one that most customers have been using. It certainly has one of the largest market shares in terms of big data NoSQL platforms, big data NoSQL databases, and so we're pleased to be able to add that bit of functionality as well. And again, extend out the capabilities of the overall platform into even more environments, helping customers make sure that they're protecting everything wherever they have it. When we certainly do see a lot of MongoDB in the environment. We will be adding additional big data environments as this year goes on. So keep an eye out for those. I've got 2 more on the roadmap. Talk about those at a later time. And then another really important part of why we perform all this activity in the first place. We've been talking about GDPR forever now, and now CCPA is right on top of us. That's a thing as well. And we've always had the ability to find and classify all of that customer data, right? Like you were always able to go and find all of Rob's social security numbers. But what we've done here is extend that out to more of a privacy program management perspective, where you can now make fulfilling DSARS requests quite a bit easier. So what's a DSARS request? It is a data subject access request. This is the heart of that GDPR that we've been talking about, where a customer can request that you A, tell them all of the information you have on them, and B, tell them how it's being used. So what we've done here is added the capability so that you can not just find where you have all of Rob's social security numbers, but basically you can find where you have all of Rob's information. So the system will then return to you every single bit of data that it knows about Rob in particular. Just going to keep picking on you, Rob, as an example, allowing you to fulfill those DSARS requests quite a bit easier. And the reason why this particular bit of functionality was so important, largely because you look at the language around GDPR, you have to be able to turn this information around in a very defined period of time, and rather quickly for that matter. I want to say it's under 30 days or something to that nature, or it is 30 days. And so being able to fulfill those requests as they come in, and they're starting to come in already from many customers, it can be a bit time consuming. And so this new bit of functionality allows customers to process and fulfill those requests quite a bit faster than they would have been able to before. And again, the same extends and applies towards CCPA. So for those that are getting ready and know that they will be affected, which let's be honest, that at this point, since it's California, that will be everyone in the US, right? If you weren't already affected by GDPR. So this bit of functionality helps get out in front of all of that also. So those were the 2 additional things that I wanted to showcase today and talk about. We will have another fundamental session where we go into the DSARS fulfillment requests in a bit more detail. We'll do another quick demonstration on that also, show you how that works in the real world. Maybe we even do one on the MongoDB one too, who knows? But certainly if anyone's interested in seeing more or has additional questions, feel free to reach out to us directly. You can always email your support rep, or if you don't have one, you can drop a line into the product team at pm@spirion.com. Rob or myself or another member of the product team would be happy to help field those questions. And that's it. I didn't see any additional questions come in at this point, so I will hold for any additional questions. And if we don't get any next couple of minutes, then we will make sure that we make this recording available to everyone that did make it, as well as the slide deck that we presented here today. And we'll send a follow-up email to that end also. So Rob, any closing comments, statements?
No, I'm good.
All right, well, excellent. Well, I appreciate it. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Abby.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. As he mentioned, we will have the PowerPoint presentation and a link to the webinar recording provided to everyone in the coming days. A huge thank you to Gabriel and Rob for a great presentation. Much appreciated today. And we hope to see you all at future webinars. Thanks again. Have a great day.